Hello everyone, welcome back to my setting, and it's time for some new Wheel of Time chapters. And this time we'll be covering chapters 10 to 20. So first, let's hope a a brief recap, right Clara? Is it going to be brief or are you gonna fall asleep? She's gonna fall asleep. So there's something I omitted in the last video, to my shame, because it was pretty major, and that is the repeat encounter with Elyas. Elyas Machera, was his last name? So Elyas, the other, I don't know how you would even call him, Yellow Eyes, the one who runs with the wolves. Essentially, a person who initiated Perrin into the world of wolf people, person, and that's pretty major. And so Gaul was out hunting or something, and Elyas snuck up on him. And it was so unbelievably badass that not even shield maidens made fun of Gaul when he retold that encounter. So next we have Shido scene. Galina swears to obey Savannah in Terava and any other wise ones using an oath rod. So she was hoping that she'll be meek and small and at the first chance strike out, but once she saw an oath rod and felt that it was legit, that kind of ended the entire argument and her plans. And then Savannah orders to move the Shido to the mountains. Then we have Graendal. Graendal is working on a forgery, forging a letter to King letter to Rodero, but the seal, the mark on it, is from King Al-Salam, who is the king, so king's cousin, and la-di-da. So that's not the point. The point is the subject of the letter, which is it contains a message that Grey Man tried to prevent the letter from being carried there. And then after that is sort of on the way, a gateway opens and Moghedien steps through with someone named Siden, and they are emissaries to Graendal because she must submit herself to Moradin, because it's now out in the open that Moradin is the Nameless, the new Nameless, the regent, ruler, emissary of the Dark One himself. But at first Graendal is kind of pulling a stop messing with me card, but then she is kind of put in her place, shall we say. And the person who puts her into place, it's weird to refer to him as a person, but I guess he has a name and gender, I suppose. Murdrel, Shaidar Haran, and he appears in front of her, or in her head with his voice, and he introduces himself as the one who is essentially a hand of the Dark One. So if Moradin is his regent, then Shaidar Haran is his hand. And Graendal is evidently smart enough to submit herself and receives her first order, which is to come and pay a visit to Moradin. Then we cut back to Katsuane. And more about her later. She kind of confuses me as a character, but plot-wise, she is going to the Sun Palace, and she goes there to talk to Daigan and Kumira, and there they kind of catch up, discuss the current state of the affairs and so on. And there Katsuane is brought to the sitting room, and then two women, Feldrin and Mirana, Faye and Vera, show up, and they question Katsuane about her plans. Why is she there? What is she doing? And seeing how they swore fealty to Rand, I suppose they're afraid that she is there to harm Rand, seeing how she wasn't knelt like they did. But Katsuane is kind of a smooth operator, a shrewd tactician and a politician and a talker, and she kind of sidesteps their questions. And then she meets Alana. And when she's waiting for Alana, Sorilea comes in and talks to Katsuane. And they have this strange conversation about how they should try to lift Rand's spirits up, which is something I frankly don't understand. Why is that relevant at that point in time? But all right. And then we have Rand. Rand is trying to capture or gather the remains of the Samael's army, because on one hand he doesn't want a bunch of essentially conscripts that defected everything to roam around and harass everyone in the countryside, and on the other side, if those are trained men, he can always use those, right? So he wants to go and meet those people himself, but this Lord Gregory doth protests much, and actually says something true, which is, it's admirable that Rand wants to do everything by himself, but again, he is a ruler and not just a king. He is higher than that, and he needs to maintain his respect and authority, and if he lowers himself to do these kind of tasks himself all the time, that's going to impact his reputation. So Rand doesn't really change his mind, but instead he kind of just gathers a posse of the said Lord Gregorin and a bunch of other nobles and Dashiva, and yeah, they kind of chit-chat on the way there, and that's about it. I think they talk about Shan-chan and the encounter with Shan-chan and things of that nature. So they go and meet those brigands, because I guess that's what they are. And of course, unsurprisingly, the leader of these brigands is unimpressed with Rand, and he doesn't acknowledge that Rand is King of Ilion or even Dragon Reborn. And Rand informs the brigands that Lord Brand that led them is dead, and is offering them to go home unharmed, unharassed, or join his forces and meet their glory. So he gives them some time to think about that. And he also tells everyone in his group to keep an eye on them so they don't slip away. Because again, I suppose it really isn't the best of ideas to let alone armed forces, even if they're not as organized as they would be in a general army, to roam around the countryside. It's not a good idea. He receives a peculiar letter from his best friend Mazrim Tame, and later is about Black Tower and the status of the current recruits and the plans regarding the Shanchan attack. And that's about it. Then we have a chapter with Egwene, which was kind of meh, where Egwene essentially was dreaming about Rand and Perrin and Matt, and then she met Garrett Bryn, and also decided to meet with Arathel and Peliwar. And Garrett Bryn again is still maintaining the idea that Egwene has an army and his men are her men, and he will do everything he can to reclaim the tower for her in her name. So what happens next is essentially regarding that subject. Egwene calls for a meeting, and on the meeting there are 18 sitters. They gather around early in the day, and it's not a secret meeting because it's a big deal. It's something major. So she orders for the camp to rest for 2 or 3 days so that repairs and everything can be done. And in the meantime, C1 is busy with reports with intelligence, and they're also having some monetary issues, supply chain issues with the camp. But the meeting that took place, that was not secret, was something that was inevitable, which is Egwene proclaiming her decision to declare war on Elyas and retake the tower. But the way she does this, it's kind of a backhanded way. She employs some trickery, some kind of a loophole, a legal loophole, if you can call it that, under the law of war, where she kind of a certain interpretation of law of war grants her greater powers that she would usually have. So she does exactly that. And there is a brief moment with Matt, too brief, I have to say. About Matt, I guess. So there's Talmanes, and the information from Talmanes to Egwene is that they shouldn't lay siege to the tower yet because Matt is still not around and Matt needs him, and they should wait for his band to unite under a common band and then strike. But actually she agrees not to get him involved in a war, if I understood correctly. We'll see about that. And at the end, the final chapter here is mostly about Nynaeve, and she is healing a group of people that suffered some losses from the Shanchan, and that's about it. Not very eventful chapters in regards to the last video, because last one was very plot heavy. This was more establishing chapters based. I think the middle, this is a short-ish book in regards to the other one, so this is kind of a middle part where I feel that Jordan was establishing some sort of crescendo towards the end. So let's move on to questions. So I don't have a lot of questions this time, but seeing how I completely blanked on Elyas last time, shame on me. Here it goes. So it's been a long time since I read about Elyas, and he was out of the picture for a long time as well. One detail that I completely forgot about him, or even missed it, is that he is a warder, or was a warder, still is a warder. He mentions in a conversation with Baron that the bond between the warder and the Aes Sedai can be miffed, neutralized to a certain extent. And by doing so, demonstrating on himself, since he's a warder who escaped, which is a rarity in itself. Usually if a warder wants to go, they are released, but if they escape, Aes Sedai have many ways to discipline them and track them. Here, the way the sort of neutralization of the bond works is both of the subjects are still aware that the other is living and breathing, but not much more than that. And my question is, will Rand ever try to do that with Alana? Will Perrin convey this information to him? And a follow-up question is, will... let me rephrase this. Elyas speaks of some kind of incoming pit of doom. So is this just a colorful metaphor, or is it a real danger? Which one is it? I'm guessing both, but yeah. My next question is, what's the deal with Shaidar Haran? This is something that I asked several times, and I know, Rafa, read and find out. But I'm just continually scratching my head, because he's a Myrddraal with a very distinct personality, which on itself is curious, because usually Myrddraals are these almost faceless drones of the Dark One, and here he is different. He has personality, and apparently he's now some sort of avatar, representative of the Dark One, which is curiouser and curiouser. And my next question is regarding this quote, and I'm paraphrasing actually, about Katsuane. And it goes something like, to achieve her goal, she would have run entire tower naked. And this is in regards to the situation with Rand and Elyas forces trying to trap Rand, and the fallout that happened after that. I'm just I'm kind of confused about her character, because this quote indicates that she's some kind of a radical. Even though she is super old, she doesn't believe in maintaining status quo for the sake of it, which makes her different from the majority of Aes Sedai already. And on the other hand, she evidently has a singular goal that doesn't really align with either Elyas' goals, or even Egwene's goals, or Rand's goals, maybe. I cannot take a kind of a guess on her motivation or even her drive. She is mysterious, she is cryptic, but what's the goal she is trying to achieve there? And let's move on to things that I liked. Well, I liked this little insight into Elyas's former life. I must admit that I almost completely forgot about him as a character, but again, Jordan is exceptionally good at making seemingly marginal characters shine, and then he brings them back with style. They have this one scene wonder moment, and then 4, 5, 6 books later he brings them back and it feels natural. It feels like, oh yeah, I mean, even though you didn't read anything about them, these 6 or 7 books, it doesn't mean that they didn't lead a life in the meantime. We just didn't show them. So that's something that always works with Jordan. Let's move on to things that I didn't like. And I'm kind of conflicted about Egwene here, because I did like Egwene in the first 10 chapters, but here I don't think it's Egwene, or maybe it is. Essentially, I wasn't too thrilled about the politicking around Egwene's declaration of war. I felt that it was kind of plodding at times, which is a shame, because I feel like court intrigue is one of Jordan's stronger suits. For example, the scenes with Perrin and the queen that returns with Berlain. And even though Perrin is doing his Taviran thing, the way everything plays out and the aftermath of it, where some characters think that he is playing the game and some don't, and the little comments from other sides and things just clicking around, that felt like a well done court intrigue. And here kind of revolved too much around Egwene, or maybe it was just uneven. I'm not sure if the politics around it were not as exciting, or the Egwene's character here wasn't exciting. Because at sometimes reading A Wheel of Time, I swear, I kind of start to think which other character is Taviran themselves, and in moments like these, I kind of feel like maybe Egwene is. I'm not sure, but I'd be curious to hear what other folks in the Wheel of Time fandom think. And next are predictions. Predictions. Prediction number 1, which is my only prediction actually today, is about Katsuane. And to continue the questions, the thread of questions regarding Katsuane, the more I read about her, the less of a grip I have on her as a character, to be honest, because she went from being cryptic and mysterious because we didn't know much, to, I don't know, an agent of controlled chaos, because I know more about her, but I still feel like I know less about what makes her tick. I mean, there are characters that are mysterious and cryptic, like Moradin. I have a grip on him, on his motivation, and through his encounters and interactions with other characters, I'm starting to form some kind of a impression about Moradin. But with Katsuane, whenever she's on screen, I'm like, yeah, you're entertaining, this is fun. I like how no nonsense this character is, but what's the deal with Katsuane? So my prediction is I'll continue to not have a clue about what her character is or will be, which is a cop-out, I know, but right? It's a cop-out. You fell asleep? Yes, you did. It's very hot, I know. So thank you everyone for watching, and I hope you have a nice evening, morning, day, whatever and whenever you are watching this. And thank you, Ethan, for your continued support on Patreon. Thank you everyone for watching and subscribing and liking. As always, any criticisms or suggestions, anything else, please feel free to comment below. Have a good one. Bye bye.